Hello, welcome to the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
The funny thing about betrayal is how quiet it feels in the moment, not loud, not dramatic, just this cold press of stillness against your ribs, like someone slipped ice into your lungs when you weren't looking. That was how it felt when my sister waited until the cake was cut, until the exact moment everyone was raising their glasses to toast me and Dan, smiling, tipsy, full of warmth, to say, "Clear as day, I'm pregnant." Her voice lifted above the laughter, carried like smoke across the room, and then came the silence. The room didn't freeze, not completely. It hiccuped, just long enough for my brain to catch up with the words and for her to look at me, directly at me, with this little twist of her lips. It wasn't joy. It wasn't excitement. It was a smirk. That smirk. Like she'd just won something I didn't even know I was competing for. And that's when I knew Laura had planned it. She'd picked the exact moment, waited for the knife to touch the cake, waited for the applause to die down, and dropped her bomb like a drunk tossing a match into dry leaves. She wanted that moment. She needed it. And just like that, my wedding day had a new headline. Sister of the bride stuns everyone with pregnancy announcement. It's not like I hadn't seen it coming. My whole life had been little reruns of this same damn plotline. Laura steps in, says something, does something, takes something, and suddenly I'm the extra in my own story. When we were kids, it was my birthday where she'd show up with some dramatic scrape or nosebleed and end up in Mom's lap all afternoon. In high school, she cried her way into wearing my prom dress after she accidentally ruined hers. She told everyone I let her borrow it, as if I was generous. I cried in the bathroom while she posed for pictures in that red satin dress I had been dreaming about for months. No one even noticed I wore my backup. No one cared. And then there was Brett. God, Brett. My first real boyfriend. He and I were solid until Laura got bored one summer and decided to start hanging out with us more often. She was 17, reckless, and had that way of making even the most decent guy forget common sense. I don't even know how it started. Just that one night, she didn't come home until 3 in the morning, and when I asked her the next day where she'd been, she said, "Ask Brett." Then she walked away. That was it. She never apologized. He did, years later, in a message on Facebook when he was divorced and balding, and I didn't respond. But the sting never really left me. Laura didn't steal boyfriends because she wanted them, she just wanted to prove she could. And every time she did, it was like scratching her name onto something I'd loved. So when she made her little announcement that night, when she turned all 100 guests' eyes onto her, hands to their mouths, whispers breaking like waves across the room, I didn't gasp. I didn't cry. I smiled. I smiled so hard my face hurt. I clinked my glass and said, "Congratulations," and Dan squeezed my hand under the table, and I didn't look at her again for the rest of the night. Because I knew if I did, I'd lose it. People kept coming up to me afterward, telling me how exciting it must be to become an aunt. How beautiful Laura looked, how lucky we all were, how this wedding was just the beginning of such a beautiful year for our family. I nodded. I laughed in the right places. I stood for pictures beside her and her glow, that carefully crafted, smug as hell glow, and I got through the rest of the night like I was underwater. When Dan and I finally made it back to the suite, I peeled off my dress like it was suffocating me. He tried to comfort me, to say all the right things, that I still looked radiant, that no one could take this day away from us, but I could feel the weight of it settling over everything. It wasn't just about the wedding. It was the final straw in a lifetime of being second place in my own damn family. "You okay?" Dan asked, brushing a curl away from my cheek. I looked him in the eye and said, "Yeah." Then I lay there all night, eyes wide open, listening to his breathing while my heart ran laps inside my chest. Laura had taken something from me again. But this time, she was not walking away clean. Because here's what she didn't know. The wedding wasn't over. There was a second one planned, a small, intimate celebration a month later in the town where we'd met, just a few friends, some old college roommates, and Dan's grandmother who couldn't travel for the main event. It was going to be a quiet gathering, but now it was something else. I stared at the ceiling until the sky started to turn gray. Then I rolled over, grabbed my phone off the nightstand, and made a call. "Hi," I said when the venue answered. "I need to move the date. And the guest list." I didn't say why. Not yet. But the truth is, the reason I moved the wedding date wasn't because of Lara's pregnancy. It was because I finally remembered the things she'd forgotten. I could play her game too. And I was done losing. It was supposed to be symbolic, just a quiet sunset gathering near the coast with waves in the background and bare feet in the sand. Nothing elaborate, nothing showy, just our kind of sacred. Dan and I had always known we wanted something personal beyond the reception hall and dry chicken plates, something that felt like ours alone, away from the noise and family drama and years of playing nice. So we'd picked a date a month out, chosen a quiet beach town with a tiny cottage-style venue, and planned it around a small group of old friends and a few people who mattered more than blood ever had. It was meant to be intimate and clean, a soft exhale after the chaos. But that next morning, as the sunlight spilled across the hotel room floor and Dan still slept beside me, I lay staring at the ceiling and knew I couldn't let it go the way we'd planned. The night before had made something snap, not in a loud, dramatic way, but like a fine thread finally giving way after years of pressure. Lara had yanked the spotlight again, hijacked a memory I should have been able to treasure, and left me smiling through gritted teeth while she soaked up attention she hadn't earned. It wasn't about the pregnancy, not really. It was the damn timing. The audacity. The way she'd looked at me when she said it, like she'd just scratched my name off the gift tags and written her own. So I got out of bed, walked into the bathroom, and shut the door gently behind me. I didn't even hesitate. I pulled up the contact for the second venue, the one I'd barely told anyone about yet, and hit call. The woman who answered had a soft, professional voice and sounded a little confused when I asked if the date could be moved up 3 weeks earlier. But when I said we'd pay extra, she didn't argue. I adjusted the catering. I shortened the guest list. I rewrote the invitations. I sat on the edge of the tub with my phone balanced on my knee and remade the whole day in under 30 minutes, changing something that had once felt sacred into something surgical, calculated, and sharp. And honestly, it felt good. By the time Dan stirred in the next room, the changes were already done. I didn't tell him right away. Not because I was keeping it from him, more like I needed to hold onto the secret a little longer, like it was a flame I wasn't ready to share. That afternoon, the phone call came. At first, I didn't recognize the number, but something deep in my gut told me exactly who it was before I picked up. I let it ring twice. Then I answered with the calmest voice I could summon. "You moved the date?" Lara's voice was already climbing, already high-pitched and vibrating with the panic she couldn't hide. "Yes," I said, like I was discussing a brunch reservation, not an emotional power shift. "You can't move the date. You can't. You didn't even tell me." "Do you have any idea?" "I didn't need to tell you," I said, interrupting her without raising my voice. "And I can." And I did. "You'll understand soon." There was a beat of silence on the line, and I could almost hear the wheels turning in her head, the math not matching in her favor. She was used to me backing down, folding, trying to keep the peace. This wasn't that version of me. Not anymore. And right on cue, the real storm hit. She screamed something unintelligible. I couldn't even make out the words, and hung up, but not before calling me a bitter bitch. Honestly, I'd expected worse. It didn't take long for the rest of the family to weigh in. By evening, my mother was calling to plead her case, talking in that half-guilty, half-passive-aggressive tone she'd perfected over the years. She said I was being vindictive. Said Lara was emotional. Said it wasn't the right time to escalate things, especially now with a baby coming. That part always came with a loaded pause, like I was supposed to drop my sword and roll out a red carpet because a fetus was involved. "You're punishing her," my mom said. "I'm setting boundaries," I replied. "You're making it about you." It's my wedding, I said slowly. So yeah, it kind of is about me. She sighed like I was the one being unreasonable and hung up not long after. And, just like that, the sides were drawn. Laura had always been the baby of the family, the one who got picked up when she fell, even if she was the one who tripped herself. My mom once told me, after a different argument years ago, that I was just stronger than Laura. I guess that meant I was expected to absorb more pain, blame, disrespect, like I had some magical resistance to betrayal. But that strength had limits, and she was about to find out where mine stopped. I hadn't forgotten what Laura did during the week of Grandma's funeral. That wasn't just some low blow. That was the moment I realized my sister would trade loyalty for attention without blinking. I'd been dating Tom for 4 months, and he was supposed to be with me the night before the funeral. Instead, he showed up with her, arm around her waist, eyes full of shame. I never got the full story, but I didn't need it. I could smell it on both of them. It took me years to stop measuring my worth in how easy it was for her to take something from me. Later that evening, I was sitting on the back porch, trying to clear my head, when I made a slip during conversation with Dan. I said I met you in 2012. We've been together for nearly 15 years now. He looked at me and laughed. Babe, that's not 15 years. I blinked. Oh, 13, I mean. I lost count. But the truth was, I hadn't. I just had so many numbers running through my mind. Dates, names, months, damage. I couldn't keep track anymore. It wasn't about time. It was about what people do with it. Just before midnight, a message lit up on my phone screen. It was from Laura. No emojis, no fake sweetness, just raw text like a blade slipping under a door. If you tell him, you'll ruin more than my baby shower. That was the moment I smiled. Not big, not smug, just a quiet, satisfied smile that said, she knows. She knows what I know. And she's scared. Some secrets grow slowly, like moss on the side of a house, creeping inch by inch until one day you look up and realize the whole damn wall is covered, and it's been there so long nobody notices the green rot anymore. That's what it felt like, carrying this thing about Laura, holding it in my chest like an ember I'd been nursing quietly for almost a year, not out of fear, not even out of kindness, but out of strategy. Because the truth, the real truth, isn't just about what you know, it's about when you use it. Josh had always been the decent one in that mess of a relationship. He wasn't flashy, not especially clever, but he was loyal in that hard, boring way that some men are, like he'd built a moral foundation out of bricks and duct tape and stuck to it no matter what. He and Laura had dated in high school, on and off, mostly off, but once he enlisted and came back with muscles and purpose, she latched on and never let go. They got married in a rush, the way people do when they think they've outrun the drama of their youth, and for a while, she played the part well. Wife of a soldier. Frequent poster of flag emojis and black and white photos of hands holding dog tags. You know the type. But underneath it, Laura was still Laura. Restless, performative, desperate for attention when it wasn't being spoon-fed to her every day. Last summer, when Josh had been deployed for the 3rd time in 2 years, I ran into her at a bar downtown, not some quiet wine bar or mom's night out tapas place, but a loud, sticky dive with pool tables and thumping music and a bartender who poured heavy. She didn't see me at first, and maybe she wouldn't have cared even if she had. Because there she was, backed against a wall with some guy who looked barely legal, maybe 21 on a generous ID, and they were kissing like teenagers on spring break, hands everywhere, her head tilted back like she was starving for it. I stood there for a second, stunned, before I quietly pulled out my phone and took a photo. Just one. Not zoomed, not edited. Just proof. I didn't say a word to her that night. I walked out, got in my car, and sat behind the wheel feeling like someone had just handed me a live grenade and told me to carry it around in my purse. I didn't tell Dan. I didn't tell my mom. I didn't even tell my therapist. I kept it, because I knew one day she'd push too far, and when that day came, I'd have something more than rage or accusations. I'd have truth. Cold, clean, undeniable truth. And so when I moved the wedding date, I didn't just send new invites. I also printed that photo, slipped it into a plain white envelope with no return address. No note, just the image. Then I mailed it directly to Josh's base, care of the mailroom where they keep things labeled for distribution when they get back from operations. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even satisfying. It just was. A fact. A quiet declaration. I see you, and I'm not playing anymore. Josh called me 2 days later. It was early morning, the sun barely rising, and his voice was raw but steady. He didn't ask why I did it. Didn't scream. Didn't accuse. He just said, "Thank you for being honest." That was it. And then he hung up. I don't know what happened between him and Laura after that. I didn't ask. But I started noticing the ripple almost immediately. Laura stopped texting. She started posting these vague, cryptic things on social media. Family first, real ones only. Blood doesn't mean loyalty, always over a black and white aesthetic photo of some random beach or tree or crying eye. She was spiraling, and it was almost pitiful to watch, except that I knew she still thought she could get out ahead of it. And that's when she made her move. I got the call from my mom while I was in the grocery store, pushing a cart with a stuck wheel and trying to remember what kind of salad dressing Dan liked again. I almost didn't answer, but something about the caller ID made my stomach tighten. I picked up, and within 30 seconds I was gripping the handle so hard my knuckles went white. She said Dan cheated, my mom whispered, like it was some kind of sacred confession. With someone from work. She says she didn't want to tell me, but she thought I deserved to know. My mouth went dry. I could barely find my voice. Dan didn't cheat, I said slowly. That's a lie. She seemed pretty sure, my mom replied. She even said you forgave him, but that's why you moved the wedding. The cart clattered against a display of canned peaches as I let go and stood there, reeling. That was her retaliation. Not to deny what she'd done, no, she couldn't do that anymore, but to muddy the water. To twist the story just enough that people couldn't tell who the real villain was. Classic Laura. When caught, throw smoke. I walked out of the store without buying anything, sat in my car, stared at the dashboard for a full 10 minutes, and thought about all the years I'd bent over backwards to protect her, to keep the family from fracturing, to hold the line even when she kicked the fence down herself. That night, I didn't drink. I didn't cry. I just picked up the phone and called my father. When he answered, tired and already bracing for more drama, I said one thing. There's something you never knew about Laura, I told him. And it's time you heard it. Some secrets don't feel like revelations when you first hear them. They slip into your brain sideways, in the middle of someone else's screaming match, or behind a slammed door when no one thinks you're listening. I was 17, sitting at the top of the stairs at my Aunt Bonnie's place, barefoot and hidden behind the railing while my mother and aunt drank 2 bottles of white wine and tore each other apart with the kind of bitterness only siblings can manage. It was the 4th of July weekend. The adults had left us kids unsupervised for hours, and by the time the sun went down, the house was thick with resentment and cigarette smoke. Most of what they yelled that night was a blur of old wounds and tired insults, until Bonnie snapped and threw her glass against the wall, then shouted, "Well, maybe if you'd told David the truth from the beginning, your youngest daughter wouldn't be running around like a damn stray dog with no leash." The silence that followed hit like a gunshot. My mother didn't yell back right away. She just whispered something I couldn't hear, and Bonnie laughed. But I'd already heard enough. I didn't move for nearly an hour. When I finally did, I walked back to the guest room, laid down beside Laura, who was snoring with one leg kicked over the side of the bed, and stared at the ceiling for the rest of the night. I didn't ask questions the next day. I didn't tell anyone what I'd heard. And over the years, I convinced myself it didn't matter. Because Dad was Dad. He raised both of us. He packed our lunches, fixed our bikes, grounded us when we lied, paid for college books, and showed up every time we failed or stumbled. Whether or not Laura shared his blood never seemed to change anything about that. Until it did. Until she weaponized her lies so casually, so cruelly, so publicly, and dragged my name through the dirt just to protect the little house of cards she'd built. And I realized, somewhere deep in my chest, that I wasn't protecting a family anymore. I was just protecting a story that was already collapsing. And for what? So she could keep sitting at the center of the table while the rest of us adjusted our lives around her needs? So I told him. Not over the phone. Not in some emotional outburst. I waited until Sunday dinner, our family's last attempt at pretending we were still the same unit we used to be, back when Dad grilled steaks and Laura still wore shoes to the table. I waited until the plates were cleared and the wine had been poured and everyone was leaning back into their chairs, full and just a little too comfortable. Then I leaned forward, looked straight at my father, and said, "There's something I think you've always deserved to know. I didn't tell you before because I didn't want to hurt you, but I think it hurts more now to keep pretending." The words didn't come out perfect, but they didn't have to. He listened. Really listened. His face didn't change much. He didn't yell or demand proof. He just sat there, blinking slowly, and finally asked, "When did you find out?" And I told him. 17 years old. At Bonnie's. Drunk conversation. A smashed wine glass. The words that burned into my brain and never left. He nodded once, then got up from the table, walked out the back door, and didn't say another word the rest of the night. Laura, of course, was silent too, but for a different reason. Her hands were clenched, her eyes wide, and I could see the gears grinding behind her frozen smile. She wasn't ready for that move. She didn't even know it was on the board. Over the next few days, Dad didn't answer calls. Didn't respond to texts. Not from me. Not from Laura. Not even from Mom, who left 3 messages crying into the speaker like that would rewind the clock. The silence from him was deafening, not in its anger, but in its finality. He wasn't reacting, he was processing. And that terrified Laura more than anything I could have said. Because Laura didn't operate in truth. She operated in narratives, in performance, in spinning the story just fast enough that no one could see the cracks. But this wasn't a crack. This was a collapse. And for once, it wasn't mine. 3 days after that dinner, she finally called me. Screaming, accusing, wailing like a victim who'd just been dragged through fire. "You destroyed this family," she shrieked. "You ruined everything. Do you even realize what you've done?" I didn't yell back. I just waited for her to breathe, then said, as evenly as I could, "I didn't destroy anything. I stopped protecting what was already broken." And that was the end of it. The second wedding came and went without her. No drama, no theatrics, no last-minute interruptions or wild announcements. Just a breeze off the lake, soft music, and people who wanted to be there. Dan's grandmother cried. My best friend from college read a poem that made everyone laugh and tear up in the same breath. And when we said our vows this time, there was no background noise. No spotlight thief. Just clarity. For the first time in my life, I felt like I'd chosen myself. Not politely, not silently, but publicly and with finality. The peace held for exactly 6 days. That's when the letter arrived. No return address, but I didn't need one. I knew the handwriting on the envelope the second I saw it, loopy, dramatic, with little hearts over every I. It smelled faintly of her perfume. Always too sweet, like cheap candy covering up something sour. Inside was a single page. No greeting. No apology. No explanation. Just 8 words, written in sharp black ink. "You think this is over? I'm not done." It sat on my kitchen table for 3 days, that letter, untouched but impossible to ignore, like a stray animal you didn't invite in but also couldn't quite bring yourself to chase away. I didn't open it right away. I wanted to, of course. My hands itched just looking at the envelope, and every time I passed it on my way to pour coffee or grab the mail or fold a dish towel, something inside me buzzed like a live wire was running under my skin. But I made myself wait, not out of fear, but out of power. Because that's what Laura didn't understand. Silence can hurt louder than any scream if you let it stretch long enough. When I finally tore the letter open, the paper felt expensive, thick and cream-colored, with the kind of texture you buy on purpose when you want something to seem official, something important. Of course, the words themselves were anything but. Just one short sentence scribbled across the middle of the page in her dramatic, curvy handwriting. "You think this is over? I'm not done." No hello. No signature. No threat, technically. Just a statement. But coming from Laura, it might as well have been a warning flare shot into the sky. I didn't lose it. I didn't cry or call anyone or storm into the next room to tell Dan about it. Instead, I made tea. And while the kettle heated up, I pulled out the photo I'd been saving for weeks. It was the one a wedding guest had taken during the reception, not the posed kind, not the kind you frame and put on the mantel next to your honeymoon photo, but a real moment. A candid. I'd spotted it when I was going through the photographer's shared folder, and it stopped me cold. It was the exact second Laura had made her pregnancy announcement, just as the knife had pressed into the buttercream frosting, just as the first slice was being lifted from the cake, and there she was, standing behind me, with that damn smirk. It wasn't even a full smile, just a little twist at the corner of her mouth, smug and satisfied, her eyes locked onto me like she'd just pulled the rug out and was watching to see if I would fall. That image haunted me more than her words ever had. So I printed it, blew it up, had it professionally framed, no cheap frame from Target, but a matte black one with beveled edges and thick glass, the kind you'd expect to see around a diploma or a gallery piece. And then I wrapped it carefully, boxed it with tissue paper and all, and slid a card on top. Inside the card, I wrote 9 words, "Every queen falls," even if she doesn't know it yet. Then I mailed it to her office. Not to her house. Not to her inbox. Her office. Because sometimes humiliation doesn't need volume, it just needs the right audience. A week later, I got the confirmation I hadn't even realized I'd been waiting for. Josh filed for divorce. No dramatic post. No press release. No messy Instagram story. Just a quiet line in the county clerk's filings, and the knowledge that the castle she'd built from lies and appearances was finally, officially crumbling. I didn't gloat. I didn't even tell Dan. I just went on with my week. Lara's pregnancy, the one that once sucked the oxygen out of my own wedding, became public knowledge in a way I'm sure she hadn't planned. It wasn't a joyful announcement anymore. It was gossip. Whispered rumors about timing, paternity, and whether or not Josh was really the father. I didn't confirm or deny anything. I didn't leak the photo. I didn't post screenshots or texts. I didn't even return her calls when she finally tried to play the victim again. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about closure. For once in my life, I had nothing to prove and nothing left to lose. But as the dust settled around me, I realized there was still one secret I hadn't spoken aloud, one final piece of the puzzle that I hadn't shared with anyone, not even the man who laid beside me every night and held my hand like it was still day one. I was pregnant, too. I'd found out 3 days before the second wedding. The test had been positive twice. But I hadn't said anything. Not because I didn't want the child, I did more than anything, but because I needed to know who I was before becoming a mother. I needed to know that I could stand up to the people who had shaped me, who had made me question my value, my role, my place in the family. I needed to fight back, once on my terms, not with fists or yelling, but with truth and clarity and just enough ruthlessness to finally feel free. Dan didn't know. Not yet. I figured I'd tell him soon, maybe next week. Or maybe never. Maybe I'd hold onto it a little longer, like a secret charm against the chaos, something no one could take from me because they didn't even know it existed. So now here I am. The storm is quiet, The knives are sheathed, the dust has settled. And all I'm left with is this one question. What do you think? Did I go too far or not far enough? Because some secrets are poison. Others are power. And sometimes you don't know which is which until it's way too late.